Good evening, guys. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the I Want to Believe It's Not an Always Dust with myself, Peter N, and the lovely Cathy.
Not hello. Chatty Cathy. How you doing?
Good. Yourself?
I'm doing good, Peter. Thank you. You had an investigation this weekend. Did you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, we went to an old haunt, pardon the pun, boom, we went to an old historical site in Merritt, BC, a place called Bailey House. I've been collecting data from there for the past 7-8 years. It's probably the first heritage site I ever went to when I moved to the interior, and just went in there. And after 2 years, didn't really touch the place because we've been on various projects and stuff like that. And it was kind of weird. It was the fact that there was a basement that never had no activity whatsoever in there whatsoever. And we set up various pieces of equipment in there and just left it running overnight. Some nights, sometimes we left it over the weekend, nothing whatsoever. And this particular evening, we decided, because of the group size and acoustics, noise traveling and stuff like that, we decided let's split the team up and start off in the basement. And it was like, holy crap, within the first 15 to 20 minutes, there was very strong EVPs, like to the point where there was 100% clarity on them, like as what they define them on TV as Class A EVPs and stuff like that. But
yeah,
it was to the point where we were getting intelligent responses back as well by 3 individuals. It sounded like there was 2 males, different voice tones, and there was a female as well, and it was just totally blew me away. But it was good. It was fun. It was nice to get your feet. It's nice when those things come along once in a while. It
exactly.
kind of makes everything worthwhile in relation to what we do. So,
especially when you've been there several times, right?
Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird place because when we first started going there, it was the first reason we went there originally was to fundraise for them, because they're a non-profit society here in BC, and we decided to conduct public. No, Tom was a different tone. Hi, Amy. It was it could have maybe, but the voice tone on Tom was totally different when we went there a few years ago. But it just when we first started investigating there, it was a place where not a lot happened, and it was just it was just our plot was just to raise money for the site and the heritage site, and then we were just going to go from there, kind of thing. But over the years we left a couple of years before we went back, and then just things started picking up there. It's weird. Like there just seems to be no pattern in relation to the activity and where it spikes. I mean, there's been a lot of activity around the area, like environmental. They've had last year they experienced floods, actually 2 years in a row as well. So it was kind of that could be an adverse effect to it as well. We don't know. Again, it's all theories and stuff like that. So it's we'll just see how it goes. Who's that?
I don't know who. So Facebook user, we would love to know who you want to know what your name is. Unfortunately, it just shows up as Facebook user.
Yeah. Anyway, how you been? So, how's the world of Cathy doing?
The world of Cathy is pretty good, thank you. Just doing our thing. That's about it. And no investigations or anything like that. I just wanted to remind people that if you are watching on whatever channel you're watching, switch it over either to the I Want to Believe channel, watch on there, make sure that you guys are subscribed, or if you are watching on the Oracle Intuitions channel, again, make sure that you're subscribed to the I Want to Believe channel as well. We will be back on the Oracle Intuitions channel this week on Wednesday for live readings, so we hope to see you there. But yeah, otherwise everything is good. Batman Incorporated is asking if it was the Bailey House.
Yes, it was. Yes, we are allowed to reveal that place. I've got my iPad failed me because I've got some notes down here. But yeah, it was a Bailey House. We were allowed to announce that that location because we've been fundraising for them for the past 6-7 years as well, which is kind of cool. Sorry, one sec.
Hi, Cody. It's good to see you. I love the fact that everybody is here tonight. So that's really good. It's nice to have all of the viewers. Makes me happy.
Okay,
well, we
so
need more viewers. It's good to have all the viewers that we have, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm lost in my words today. You can tell I'm tired.
It's all good. So this week's guest, good friend of mine. I met Brad when I was director of TAPS many moons ago, and actually a big fan of Brad as well. He carries that kind of word research all the way through. Very interesting gentleman with vast knowledge of background in relation to the science and that deviation between the field of what we've got here and that basic understanding as well. So let's bring Brad on so he can introduce himself. Hi, Brad. Good evening. Welcome to the show.
How's everybody?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Very good. So I don't want to give too much of an intro to yourself, but would you like for the audience just to give an introduction to yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm actually the research coordinator for the Center for Paranormal Research and Investigation. We are now a federally recognized nonprofit organization dedicated to the educational research into what the general public tends to call paranormal. And I'm a former industrial chemist. I worked for Union Carbide, and also I worked for Dow Chemical Corporation for several years. And now I'm into the IT world and into the world of video conferencing and emergency systems, preparedness stuff. And that's about it in a nutshell.
Wow.
So how long have you been with them? How long have you been doing this for?
With CPRI?
Yeah.
Since December 2010 was when I started with this organization. So we've been collecting data. I've been collecting data a very long time. Our organization was actually founded by a lady named Bobby Atristain, who Pete, you may have run into back during your TAPS days. She was friends with Jason Hawes and appeared on in the first season of the Ghost Hunters TV show. And she founded our organization back in 2000. So we've been around a long time, and they've been collecting data well before I got into this organization. So I just took up the mantle of research coordinator, and they asked me to basically I look at what experiments we want to run, at the theories we're looking at, organize the experiments, and then we go out and find locations to run the experiments if we need to do that. Sometimes we end up just going to a library, like at the University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies it's a paranormal library, which is just amazing. It has data going back 150 years, and sometimes we might just look at that. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing.
Let's start back at the beginning. What got you into the paranormal field?
Oh, well, my wife, this is just before December. There was an event at the inn that up in New Hampshire that Jason and Grant owned for a while. The two of them owned. And they had an event up there, and I was a big fan of the TV show, not just for the fact that they would find stuff, but for the fact they didn't find stuff all the time. And I thought that gave credence to the show. So I said, hey, I love watching the interaction between the members and stuff like that. So I said, I want to go to this event. And my wife said, here, surprise, here's a ticket. And so I flew up to Maine, drove across Maine to get to New Hampshire, and drove through some towns right out of Stephen King, I tell you. And then I made it up there. It was snowing. It was a real shining moment. If you know
I was going to say, I was having flashbacks of the movie. Then it's like Jesus.
But But I get there, and we meet everybody, and everybody starts talking to everybody. There's like maybe 30 of us at this event, maybe 30 or 40 of us at this event, not very many. And I had a chance to talk to Grant, had a chance to talk to Jason, and I went on these tours because you all know that inn is quote haunted unquote. So I said, yeah, I'll bite. So I went up there. I went to into the coach house, and John Zaffis of all people was leading our tour. And he took us in there, and then he actually left us in a room and went somewhere else for a brief moment. And it was dark in there, and I was in there with another guy and his 9-year-old daughter, and we were standing in there just minding our own business, and all of a sudden something walked between us and the window. I saw head, shoulders, and a hat with a bill walk right between us and the window. Now at that time I was a huge skeptic. Right, massive skeptic. I was right up there with Kenny Biddle. I mean, I was a huge skeptic.
Non-believer.
Yeah. So I was like, whoa, what was that? So I'm reaching back for the light, and the daughter runs up after whatever it was, and I turn on the light, and she's feeling along the wall, and we don't see. We don't see anything in there. So at that point, I decided I've got to find out what the heck just happened here. So that's when Grant pulled me aside and got me involved with the group that I'm in now. Had me contact Bobby. I used Grant as a reference, and then I was able to start work like I've been doing. So trying to figure out what's going on.
It's like your group is very unique in relation to a lot of teams that I know in how you collect data, and especially with your background as well, that kind of scientific background. Do you think it was just by chance that you found a team that had the same parallels as you in regard to that research, quote unquote?
I think it was like kismet, so to speak, or it was like it was like somebody reached out and said, "There's your man. Hang out with him," and then I got to be a part of this wonderful organization. I mean, this organization's amazing. We got 35 people across the whole state of Virginia in various fields that help out with the research. We have sociology, a guy, he's a PhD sociologist. He's also the chair of a sociology department at a university. We've got another PhD in education that is he does a lot of our video work. And the guy has a PhD in education, but he wants to do video work, which I think is pretty neat. And then, I'm sorry, the Facebook stuff's distracting me here. But we also have MD, we have several nurses, we have police officers, we have firemen, we have data analysts from NASA, we have electromagnetic engineer that works with the Navy. We have all these different people that are part of our organization and we can reach out to as resources. And what's really cool is that, everybody talks about peer review, right? We can actually, before the papers actually go out, we can peer review it internally first because of all the breadth of knowledge within our organization. And when I say peer review, I'm not talking about paranormal peer review. I'm talking about peer review of the methodologies that we're using to collect the data. That's what's important. And so we can review that stuff all day. We have meetings once a month that last a very long time. And we talk about all of our data that we've collected and, what could we do better? Should we try to experiment this direction? Should we change this? That kind of thing. So a lot of that happens internally before that ever gets out to the public.
So just for our viewers, just to kind of clarify, you're not the typical ghost hunter, paranormal investigator type of team. You're not going into, are you going into houses or how are you working? Or do you even really do investigations?
Well, what we do, it's not really an investigation. We have gone into private homes before, but that's in pursuit of the experiment. If somebody calls us and we're in the middle of different experiments, because we have a bunch of them going on right now that are different. And if this house meets the criteria, then we'll go there just to preliminarily to see if, it'll work for us. And then we might set up the experiment. and then we go in, and then we collect the data, and then we leave, and then we tell folks up front, it's like, hey, we're not going to tell you that that's the ghost of your dead Uncle Fred sitting on the bed over there. We're not going to tell them that. We tell them that it's like, hey, we'll tell you if there's something weird going on, and that we'll probably return if we find out there is, we'll probably return in the future to try to find out exactly what that is. So that right there is how we operate. And sometimes, you call them heritage sites, I believe, Pete. And when we go, we're actually docents with something called Preservation Virginia. It's a really cool nonprofit organization that runs several heritage sites down here. And so we go to those, and those are like actually laboratories for us, which is awesome because we can go in and try to reproduce things over and over again, which is the crux of all this scientific experimentation that we're doing. So that helps out a lot. Now we're actually also involved with a state government entity down here that runs the state parks, and we actually get a chance. We've done some work for them because they've had weirdness going on. They want to know what the weirdness is, so they asked us to come in to find out what the weirdness is. Problem is, we've been finding out that there's a lot more weirdness than they thought. So we're writing that kind of stuff up too. So
by definitive tone, you're a paranormal researcher.
Yes,
basically
that's exactly right.
It's kind of funny.
We're all researchers. We're a research organization. We're more of an academic organization related to like a college university than a ghost hunting organization. So
it's quite funny.
Sorry, we have a question coming in. So Cody asks, do you all catalog, store, and index your collected data for future cross-reference use or the like, in case you ever have to go back and see if there's any correlation to present cases you're on?
I'm smiling because Cody stole my thunder. I was going to bring that up. Another thing. Got it, Cody. What we're going to do is we do that. We have a database that handles a lot of our text-based information entering that also links to a large server array type thing it's on Dropbox. I'll just be blunt. And then it's a huge Dropbox though, multiple terabytes. And a lot of that hard raw data is all over there. And the database actually links to it. So it works out real well that way. And we actually, we have other organizations that sometimes want to look at our data and our research. So we say, yeah, sure, bring it on, because that's what it's all about. Open data. That's part of the scientific approach to this. You got to be able to look at the data. Other people should be able to look at your data. We should be able to look at other people's data, that kind of thing. And we're one of the few that's willing to do that. That's a bummer.
It's a very that data sharing, that subject, and we brought that up as a subject many years ago when I was a part of TAPS and when we were a part of TAPS Forum and stuff like that. But everyone's so closed doors in relation to that, and even like I think there was a thread at one point about data sharing, and I brought up about my data log and stuff like that, and I think it was just only you that was interested in it, because it was just like, well, I have a data log of different colors that I've different lights. I've experimented with different shades of colors and stuff like that. And this data log's over 10 years old. It's like, do you want to see it? And it was like crickets.
Yeah.
I
remember that.
What was it? It was just funny, but it's funny. Anyway,
I remember that. I remember that, Pete. I remember that vividly. And then I had discussions, with other folks about that too, outside of the TAPS family, because we're part of the TAPS family as well. And we've had discussions outside of that. I mean, I know, Dave Gibb, you know him. And, he's actually come down to Virginia a couple of times and went with us to do some of this data collection that we do. And we worked real well together, and we got to talk to him about it a little bit. We also talked to other groups around outside of the TAPS family, though, about, the same kind of thing. Hey, you got it. When you collect your data, you got to store it so you can cross-reference it. You have to relate it to the experiment you're trying to run. Don't just collect data for data's sake. You got to know why you're collecting the data, and that kind of stuff. So it was really nice working with Dave, because Dave, and by the way, Dave, you need to send your check to my address. And I'm joking. But Dave actually he actually listens quite a bit, and he and his wife spent a lot of time with us down here, along with their group came down too.
Yeah.
You know, John and all those guys. They all came down, and it was really cool because they actually, you know, we exchanged a lot of information at that point, which a lot of groups just do not do. Like you said, Pete, groups just will not do it, and I don't understand why. It's disappointing, but you know, it is what it is. We're trying. You know, we come on like shows like yours. We get on. We do these presentations at large cons. We know we do this kind of stuff, and we try to get people to do this, and then we still get that door shut in our face when we.
I think a lot of it's even back then, and it's still the same now. It's egos, because people have that. I don't know, that envisionment in their heads that this picture that I've captured, I can't share it with anyone in case people say, you know, naturally dismiss it and say it's an orb, which it's something, you know, I don't want to be criticized about this because I have to keep up my reputation. And then the other side of the fence as well is the people that don't know what their equipment is. Like, I'm not talking about the K2s and that bullshit or anything like that. I'm talking about like the basic functions of a camera, basic functions of a voice recorder, like all of those elements that we need to know as paranormal investigators. And you know, they hear something mechanical and they naturally think, oh, you know, that's Auntie Meg, you know, and it's just that reason why it's so freaking closed door in the field, where people don't share pictures and they don't share like EVPs. Like, hey, Brad, what do you think of this? What do you think? You know, what do you think of this picture? I don't mind, you know, having it thrown back in my face. But I would share it with someone that has a clue what they're talking about. And I'm not saying a paranormal expert, but the people that know the basic functions of a camera, the basic functions of a voice recorder and stuff like that. And, you know, the right way of measuring for paranormal activity in that respect. But it just, it's kind of a shambles, and it's getting worse before it gets better, unfortunately. But,
so someone's asking if sorry, no, that's okay. Someone's asking if Amy's asking if the opportunity is okay, hang on. Closing a closed door, is that a normal thing for the paranormal field? Like, people don't share?
Yeah.
This is quite common then.
It's too bad. It's the norm. It's the norm.
Yeah, totally. It's like 99.9% of the field. Like, no one would share what they find. I mean, a lot of the investigations I've had over the years, there is that confidentiality agreement that I have with clients. So I can't, you know, we're not going to be putting it on Facebook or anything like that. But if there's that close network community with, you know, where you have like-minded people in one community that's kind of private to the public eye, there is that, you have that ability to share, but people are just too paranoid to share that because of what they're going to hear back.
Yeah, I think we've kind of picked up on what's going on there over the last 12 years. You know, that a lot of what's going on there tends to be, you know, you're right, Pete. They don't want to be criticized. You know, they're afraid of criticism. They're afraid of rejection, that kind of stuff. When that's what this is all about, because I've been wrong before. And if anybody from CPRI is watching this, erase that from your mind, because I'm never wrong. But but seriously, I've been wrong before, and our own people have called me out on that. So, you know, we're not afraid of that. You know, you can't be afraid of that, because you learn from that. That's what's important, and we're never going to go anywhere if you don't learn. And that's what I keep preaching over and over and over again. Everybody from CPRI has heard me. I've preached to the choir there. But, you know, and Cody's right when he posted his comment about, you know, you got to know what you're reading there. You got to know, you know, that's why we say that when you you're going to go into a place, first off, you've got to know what experiments you're going to run. Then you only bring the equipment for the experiments. You don't bring anything else because you don't need it, because it's just going to overshadow everything you're trying to do. And then it also has the possibility of biasing what you're trying to do, which you don't want to do. So I think that would limit that whole problem with people not knowing what their equipment does. If they would just run the experiment and just bring what they need to collect the data for the experiment, that it should help eliminate that. It's one mitigation step. What we in the chemical industry, we call that an engineering control. So, it would control the situation so you don't have to worry about it. It removes that variable.
I would think that in the paranormal field, I mean, especially, if you look at just the advances that we've had in the last few years with the equipment, but I mean, also look at your phones, right? I mean, there's 800 million silly apps out there and everything else. You would think that people would want to do, that sharing in order to have validation, like true validation, not just like, oh, I uploaded this app and look, there happens to be some stick man dancing around on a couch over there. Like, you know what I mean? Because like, it's, I mean, I don't know how many times you see that and you're like, okay, I can't. Like, you're just, God forbid if you tell them, like, this is an app that is, you realize this is not anything of validation or real in any possible manner. I mean, this is an app that your phone has created. So, you know what I mean? But they don't want to hear that, right? They want to hear that I mean, it's kind of like, it's not an orb, it's dust. I mean, how many times have we had to tell people that, right?
Yeah.
And, so many, it's like, oh, I just vacuumed and now look at all the orbs. Oh, my family's visiting. Like, come on.
Well, go ahead, Pete. I'm sorry. You go ahead.
Sorry, but with that envisionment of like apps and stuff like that, has the field really evolved with equipment? Really,
Not really.
I think in relation to the field and where we've gone with equipment, we've kind of gone nowhere fast over the last like 10 to 15 years. We've got probably a little bit better voice recorders than what we had before, just a tweak. But I think the field's generally got worse in relation to what people deem as equipment, because you've got the apps, you've got that, that piece of plastic equipment that the ghost hunting store's selling for $500, but it doesn't quantify anything, and it's just like, and it's confusing the field in relation to the basic premises of what we're trying to achieve. It's just like, let's measure, let's use basic things that we know that, if you don't understand the camera, if you don't understand how a voice recorder works, just use a piece of string or something like that, measure it that way, quantify, at least you know the variables behind it. And I think it's got tragically worse than what it's got better, and it's just brilliant.
Which is why you would think that there would be more pure sharing. Like, you know what I mean? This is what people should be sharing, like a little more, or be open to it.
And the thing that I wanted to bring up about that, Pete, is that, a lot of people are in for that. They just want the experience. That's the only reason they're into it. And some people, they just want, some of the groups out there, they're basically are using the paranormal field to raise funds for a heritage site, let's say. And they don't want to scare off the people. So because they're not so they don't scare off the people, they bring out all the stuff from, various ghost hunting stores, all the flashy light, blinking light stuff, doesn't collect any data. Nobody knows how it works. Then they use different methodologies that I find highly suspicious. And, then they do that just so that they keep the people coming to raise money. The problem with that is we're perpetuating a myth at that point. There is no scientific evidence to show that any of that stuff works, or even how it works. And that's the biggest problem with that. One of the things that we need to do, though, is everybody needs to be, hold on, I'm reading Cody's this. Yeah, that's true. But we basically need to be citizen scientists. We need to, even if you just know the basics of the scientific method and experimental design, just the basics, what you would learn in high school, then you could actually be, bless you, you would actually be you could actually be what's called a citizen scientist, where you could actually collect data and present that to a known group of scientists to do the actual data analysis on, statistical analysis and that kind of thing. And that's what we need. We need more than anything, because, you know, one, two, or three groups out there that operate like we do is not enough. Luckily, there's you know, the University of Virginia, the Division of Perceptual Studies. They do research into paranormal stuff. Johns Hopkins is dipping their toes in it. Of course, then you've always got the Ryan Institute, and you've got people like that. But what is your take in regard to the data loggers in use today? It depends on what you're using them for, Cody. If you're going to, data loggers themselves are essential in the experimental design, because you need to collect the data over time. And you got to log that data over time. So you collect it on a data logger. Probably the only advancement in paranormal tools out there that I've seen that's been worth well, in West Virginia, we say crap. So that's worth a crap, is the EDI Plus. And even that in the beginning was not, because they would not give you any of the specs on the sensors that are in it, because it does data log environmental data over time. And that's all it does. It doesn't say there's a ghost. It doesn't say anything like that. It just records environmental data. Here's the problem that I have with people using those things, though, is they carry them around like this. Oh, look at this. And you can't do that with an environmental sensor, because it changes because you're moving it, you know? So you can't do that. It has to be a static piece of equipment. So I like those, and I think those are okay. I wish their sampling rate was a little better than once per second. But, you know, it is, you get, you know, if they did that, then they didn't have to increase the price, because they have to get more expensive data logging capacity in that thing. So anyway, that's the only one that I really trust. You have those HT sensors that you could get, humidity and temperature sensors that people use in industry. You can get those on Amazon.com all the time. And it is real easy to use those things. Now, here's the funny thing. You mentioned cell phones earlier, Pete. Actually, Kathy might have mentioned it. One of you guys mentioned it. And on this silly cell phone right here is on a Samsung cell phone, you've got like 30 odd sensors on that thing. And you can actually use that to be a data logger, collecting data off those sensors for light. You can collect vibration. Orientation is really cool, and proximity. And you can collect a lot of that data over time that would actually help you on the back end of whatever experiment you're trying to run. You know, you're collecting environmental data, but you just have to remember one thing. If you're running other data loggers other than your phone, don't use your phone, because it will interfere with those other data loggers. The phone, the RF from the processor in that phone will reach out as far as 6 feet and mess with just about any kind of geomagnetic, any kind of magnetometer you've got. Forget it; it's not going to work. So that's one thing that I think that people are, you know, they're kind of misrepresenting these things too. They're saying that they're either saying 100% you can't use them, or 100% we use them all the time, which is not the case.
Right.
You know, they're good. They're good. They have a niche use. Let me put it that way.
I use the old iPad, like probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I actually got an app, believe it, for seismic measuring, and I got like the sensors, and it was attached to the iPad as well, and that was pretty sophisticated as well. Like, and it was an app, but it had the associated software and the equipment with it as well. So it, you know, everyone shuns upon like when we shun upon things like the apps, it's like the ghost detectors and stuff like that. Phones
Right.
have certain capacities to record data, as we know, and it's just finding the right software to go with that, rather than finding you know, the ghost sensor that's 99 cents that, you know, you can detect a ghost in the house and stuff like that. But interesting you bring up.
I wanted to show you. If you look on the let me see if I can put my finger up, wrong side. Right there. It's called Sensor Insider Pro. It will access every sensor on your Android phone. They have it for Apple too. And Sensor Insider Pro, and yeah, it costs $3 American. But once you have it in perpetuity, and it always updates. So that particular item will allow you to use the sensors that are on your phone as true environmental sensors and data logging sensors. One gotcha that you got to worry about is your temperature sensor on your phone is actually looking at battery temperature. Yeah. So that you don't want to use that. You don't want to use that. But other than that, though, the vibration, the magnetometer, because they have it's basically a tri-field magnetometer on that thing. You know, it's got the 3 planes. You can look at all 3 planes, tridimensional here. And then the light sensor is top notch on the latest Samsung phones. It is really good. So and they sample as fast as 100 times a second or more. And that is fast. And what we're finding is that some of these changes in environment that correlate with what anomalies, either audible or visual, they happen very quickly and within a short radius, like a 3-foot radius around the point source of where that would be. So if your sensor's not in there, within that radius from where the point source is, you're not going to pick anything up. And the other thing we're finding is that the sampling rate's very important, because with the EDI pluses, since it only samples once every second, you got to think it's like sample. Between the times that I said the word sample, there could be hundreds of things happen. Yeah. And you won't capture them because the sampling rate's not fast enough to pick that up. And so, but we still use them for background environmental data. We still do that. And it's and also they call it EMF sensor on there. It's just a magnetometer is all it is. And the magnetometer itself is also triaxial. It measures on all 3 axes as well on that EDI plug.
I use the EDI. Obviously, the K2 on it's garbage. I don't even go near that because obviously the environmental. We won't go too much on that. But I use it for the thermometer and the pressure sensor as well. And the problem with the very first model that came out, the very first software that came out for the EDI, was it was very complicated in relation to what it was trying to achieve in relation to data logs and stuff like that. And it was just a big pile of mess where we couldn't decipher whether it was a pressure, the pressure sensor log, or whether it was the temperature or anything like that. And it was just like squiggly lines. But they've modified it, and thankfully they came out with the EDI Plus, where you got the you can stick the SD card at the bottom as well, and it pre-records it all as well. So it's a good tool. I was using it yesterday as well. It's a good piece to have as a part of the kit.
Go ahead, Kathy. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Cody is asking, have you or your team, I'm just going to put up here, ever had any theories or hypothesis from investigations you later found out was substantiated with your collected data? Can you explain how it was or wasn't? And then also,
how many times? Multiple times.
Okay. All right. And then he
multiple
asked
times.
Okay. Are you able to set up controlled sample rates at all as well?
The sample rate's a sample rate on the sensor. It just is, and you have to take it or leave it. Basically, if you're looking to sample pretty fast, you have to pick the right kind of equipment that'll sample that fast. And you could borrow stuff from colleges and universities, environmental science labs, physics labs, stuff like that. Because some of the things that we're seeing now, we kind of have a really good idea that a lot of what people call residual activity, we call it non-interactive activity, there looks like there's a natural cause. I mean, it just does. It's almost, people talk about stone recording or whatever. I don't know what it is because we haven't found the actual cause yet, but the data seems to be pointing right towards a natural cause. So and we have a terabyte of data on nothing but residual type activity. But what we're finding, though, is the interactive activity, which doesn't happen anywhere near as often, like once out of 100 instances, or even more than that, or less than that, is around when there's something interactive happening, we're seeing spikes in ionizing radiation, the stuff you read in a Geiger counter. And we're also seeing changes in the geomagnetic field, deflections up or down, depending on the how the magnetometer is set up. But there is a deflection as much as maybe it can go up as high as a full Gauss. And that's huge. So we see that when there's an interactive thing, like a door opens or something moves or somebody gets touched. You know, we had a guy, a huge skeptic on our thing, and he's probably listening. And I'm not gonna out you on this thing, but he's probably listening. But he's a bit of a skeptic about a lot of things, and we took him in a location as one of the heritage sites that we go into, and we had some environmental data loggers set up near him, within like a couple of feet of him, and then all of a sudden something like a cold hand started touching him all over his body. And he was jumping around on camera. It's great. Let me pull up the video. No, I won't do that to him. He was jumping around like, you know, something was touching him. And then lo and behold, we got a spike in radiation and a change in the geomagnetic field and the actual negative temperature spike each time he was touched. It dropped by 5 degrees. Each time he was touched. And so that right there, you know, we don't see that. We don't see on the interactive stuff, we don't see the traditional, you know, cold spots or anything like that on the interactive stuff, on the non-interactive stuff. But on the interactive stuff, we are. And, you know, we actually had an incident too, where we have been running a battery drain experiment for years, literally years. And we had no data to substantiate a battery drain at all. And all of a sudden, one instance, it's right in front of a door where we had interactive activity. That door used to open and shut on us, right? So we put a lot of battery operated equipment up there, including an EDI Plus, which is RF shielded, which is a cool thing, which is important for the rest of the story here. And then all of a sudden, we were downstairs beneath it and we heard somebody run by, right? So we heard somebody run by, and so we run upstairs to see, and all of our equipment, battery operated equipment, is off except for the EDI Plus.
Wow.
And when we looked at the magnetometer on the EDI Plus, right when the rest of the equipment turned off, because it just turned off, it didn't actually drain or anything. But when we looked at the EDI Plus on the EMF reading, there was a multi-Gauss EMP that happened right when that stuff got turned off. It was an electromagnetic pulse, massive electromagnetic pulse, just right there. None of the other magnetometers we had in the rest of the building picked it up. It was just right there. Wow. Now, what this tends to point to, though, if you start looking at the physics of it, and me, I'm a chemist, I'm not necessarily a physicist, but when you start looking at the physics of it, you know, you think, well, let's see, this is kind of pointing a certain direction here. And that direction is kind of hinting around that maybe there's something Einsteinian going on here, like an Einstein-Rosen bridge. You know, the Einstein-Rosen bridge is like essentially like a wormhole. So, you know, that's just one theory about why we're getting this data that we're getting. There's probably a dozen other theories too, but that was significant. You know, that was a significant thing, along with what happened to the fellow down at this heritage site that we went to. That kind of data is indicating that there's, you know, if you look at the theory of a wormhole, if it opens, you're going to see a spike in radiation, a spike in UV light, a spike in, and you're going to see a change in the magnetic field around it. Now, what you're going to also see, though, is a change in environment. And that's because on what's on the other side of the wormhole would be a different temperature, pressure, humidity than where you are. So if you see that kind of thing open up, then you're going to see the cold spot, or you're going to see an increase in temperature. You're going to see a massive change in barometric pressure or humidity. You might see that kind of thing in an interactive environment. And that's just one theory, though. One theory. And we have probably a dozen that we're looking at based on this data, because we just started looking at this. Because, out of the terabyte of data that we got for residual stuff, we probably have maybe 100 megs of data on interactive stuff, and it's not enough to do any kind of statistical analysis on yet. So, but we're trying because as well as I do, finding something that's interactive is really hard to find. You can hear stuff all day long, but if it's not interactive, then it doesn't matter for us right now on that line of experiments. That's just one line of experiments.
So, going back to the beginning, when you were talking about when you have your council of your team discuss cases when they come up and stuff like that, what do you guys do in preparation of research of a new case that differs to, most people define research before they go into the place. They research the history of the building and stuff like that. What do you guys do prep before you actually go to the site, or you decide whether you guys should be going in there or not?
Well, we actually have a couple of folks that are trained in interrogation in their day jobs. We have them talk. Yeah, so they're going to come up and knock on your. They're going to knock on your door in a minute, Pete. But anyway, they wear the black suits with the black ties and everything. No, I'm joking. But they actually talk to the people and get a gist and try to figure out if they're like lying, because people will call you and lie to you because they think you're going to get the TV show in there, and and they also will lie to you because they're trying to get out of rent. They don't want to make their house payment, something like that. We've had all kinds. Of course, we also had the druggies that are just stoned out of their mind when they call us.
Yeah.
And you send Pete in. There you go. But but anyway, what they do is they find out, they vet the people first, and then we look at what they're talking about, and if it meets, if they're what they're seeing or experiencing or what have you meets some of the criteria of some of the whatever line of experiments we're running at that time, then what we'll do is call them up and make arrangements to conduct what we call on-site research at their location, and we design an experiment around we basically use one of our existing experiments and then adjust the design of it, so to speak, to match their location and try to collect data that way. So we can at least be talking, apples to apples when we start comparing data later in our data analysis sessions. So that's kind of what we do. The history, actually, sometimes we look at that, but sometimes we're not really worried about that. What we want to see is, all these things are popping up underneath here.
Sorry.
Yeah, we actually have medical professionals that are part of our organization. So mandatory reporters as well, because in the States we have to, if somebody sees something that violates the law in regards to youth or female individuals or something like that, that has to be reported to a government entity. So a lot of our folks are already mandatory reporters. So we try to have people with that kind of background as part of not really the interview. Let me put it that way, of the interview with the people. So we try to do that, and that's how we try to cover that. Plus, if we go into the site, we want to have some of those people with us. We actually experienced one time we went to a location, and luckily we had an MD with us. And while we were in the location, when we got there, the person kept talking about how she was hearing voices, right? Well, we were running audio in there almost exclusively, trying to get some environmental data too. And we were trying to do that when all of a sudden her story starts changing to where the voices are telling her to kill the animals from her neighbors and stuff like that. So we're like, ooh, wait a minute. And then the MD walked up to me, and I was setting up stuff. And I was, just moving equipment around. And she says, pack up the equipment, put it in the car, and wait for me in the driveway. It's like, okay. So we did that. And then she came out later and told us what was going on. And a lady later had to, there was some mental issues going on there. So, but we stepped out of that one pretty quick. Yeah, we've run into that before. And, you know, and I hate to be crass, but we're trying to collect data to perform research. If we can help somebody while we're doing that, that's great. But believe it or not, that's not the primary goal. The primary goal is to collect the data. And and that's what any academic organization is going to do. Yeah. They're going to collect the information. And if we can help somebody by collecting that information and letting them know that there's nothing weird going on in your house, or, you know, there's nothing weird going on out in your yard or anything like that, that's great. We can do that. But our primary goal is to collect the data and further the field so we can help the vast majority of people out there versus just that individual. We're trying to help a much broader group of people, so to speak.
So with your data logs and your archives, that kind of thing, has there been a trend that you've seen that has been more noticeable in relation to increased paranormal activity in regard to environmental factors?
Well, one thing we have noticed is that there are certain environmental factors that cause people to think they hear and see things when there isn't anything there. You know, we have seen that. But there's a lot more, you know, it seems like there's a lot more people reporting stuff, but I think that's leaning more towards the large amount of media, either social or television or what have you, advertising the fact that people need to report this stuff. And so people go out and it's like, well, let's see, my door creaks all the time, so maybe that's paranormal, so they report that. Or better yet, my cat sits and stares at the wall all the time. And it's like, you know, well, besides the fact it's a cat, you know, I can't say that that's paranormal kind of thing, you know. So that a lot of that happens because it's just being pushed out there through the media. A lot of folks are pushing that out there.
Do you find with most of your cases there's more definitive intelligent hauntings, or would you lean it more to, and forgive me, I don't know the term, I forgot the term you quoted, but residual.
Non-interactive.
So is it, do you find it more intelligent, or do you find it more non-interactive? Is there a...
I'd say it's more non-interactive than interactive, because, you know, we're able to get so much more data on the non-interactive. It's so hard to find something that's interactive because you got to have your sensor technology so close to the spot where the interactivity occurs, and that is really hard to do because you never know where that's going to pop up, and usually that's accidental. So, but the vast majority of it, though, tends to be residual. And one thing that we have found is that you're going to have residual type activity just about anywhere. Right. Brand new house down the street, that kind of stuff. We found that we can get what people call EVPs, and that's another line of experiments we're looking at, because right now, we can't say definitively, yeah, some WD-40. Well, that's true. But we can't say definitively that there's anything really like an EVP, because the experiments we're running. One second. Actually, we ran a study on that, Amy, and the study indicates there was no difference pre-pandemic to during the pandemic for the number of reports that was done. I have that actual report was posted to ASSAP, and it's also up on academia.edu. And it was a study that was done over the 2 years of the pandemic. So, yeah, there was no difference between. But anyway, I digress. But, you know, on the subject at hand, excuse me, I did the same thing, Kathy. You know, in looking at, we were talking about the whole thing. I'm sorry, I was being distracted by everything down below the screen there.
Sorry.
You're fine. But you know, I think that, in regards to EVPs, we're going to have to run a series of experiments. I know, Pete, you remember a guy named Chris Slosher? Used to be with the Taps family.
He was associated with the Taps family for at the first. I know. I know him.
Yeah, he lives down in Texas now, but he's presented us an experiment where we're going to do some experimenting just on about something similar to that, and that's going to be one of the first steps. But the data we have right now indicates that all the audible stuff we're getting, all of it, is actually audible. It's not EVP stuff where we didn't hear it and and it only comes across a recorder, because we're finding out when we run multiple recorders in a room, which is what we do for redundancy, even if we didn't hear it with our own ears, it's been picked up on multiple recorders, on multiple recorder types, on multiple microphone types, dynamic and electrets, so phantom powered mics. So, we're going to have to run some serious experimentation to look at that, and all the transcommunication people are going to throw rocks at me, but we just don't have the data to show that right now, and so we're going to do some experimentation on that, just that part as well. It's just going to take some time to collect the basically we got to collect all the equipment. I've got a real nice Zoom multi-channel podcast recorder that we're going to use. And I've got a bunch of dynamic mics, and I got a bunch of phantom powered mics that we're going to spread out, and have them in pairs so we can see what happens there as a first step. Because if it's going to be EVP, it's probably going to be, the first step is to eliminate microphone changes, whether it's using a coil and a diaphragm in a dynamic mic, or whether it's using something phantom powered. We're going to have to isolate those first. And then after we get that out of the way, then we can move on to the next step. Well, is it manipulating the recorder itself? That kind of thing. And there's a lot of things, people, there's a lot of experiments people are trying anymore regarding, the Faraday cages and things like that, just to see. So we're going to have to do that a little bit. And another thing we found out too, is that dynamic mics are great antennas. And, they pick up RF from AM radio stations, FM radio stations. If the environmental conditions are just right, they will pick that up. Now, here's what's cool about that. Even if you pick it up, one thing that we found is at one heritage site location, if we have a mic in a certain location, when it picks up radio or RF, it's not picking RF in real time. It's picking up RF that was broadcast 6 months ago. And we have that. We've run into that twice at the same location with a dynamic microphone and 100 feet of XLR cable.
That's the basic premise of the Frank's box, wasn't it? That ham radio. Yeah. It was that residual. Radio frequencies that they were trying to tap into. More than
that was the original Frank's box. Was that was originally what they were looking for. Now it's been polluted with weirdness out there. It's been polluted with weirdness, and people can't. They're using these boxes and they can't tell. There's no way that you, unless you have it identify the frequency, and then you can go back to that frequency and make sure that it's not a police car, fire truck, CB radio, whatever. You can't use that as real research data. So we don't. Now there's going to be a series of experiments run on that too. And I'm actually going to build a real Frank's box from the original plans. Did you build one?
I've got one.
You want to ship it down to me?
No. Actually, a friend of mine in the UK made it for me. He built it and he sent it over to me. But it's on the circuit. It's like on a circuit board. It's not pretty or anything like that. It's the original one, and you've got to do when you get it set up, because obviously it picks up picks up the broader frequencies, and you've got to regulate it first of all, because it doesn't scan through it. All it does is it goes, and that's all it does, because it's tapping into that frequency band rather than that one broad frequency band, rather than going through each individual one. But it's cool, and I started using it about 2 years ago, and I got it set up on an investigation I had down in Vancouver, and it was really interesting what came through on it. There was obviously no static or anything like that, but I did get a voice come through on it, 100%. And it's there's something there's definitely something there in relation to the radio frequencies. But going back to what you say as well, it's finding that with the spirit box, when it's scanning through, it's finding that frequency it picked it up on, and concluding whether there was anything natural behind it, like radio walkie-talkies and stuff like that. But what's interesting as well is something that I did about 3 years ago was that I did an experiment with multiple voice recorders and stuff like that, and microphones in one room, and it was actually investigating my house, but keep that quiet for my wife. But I used a tape recorder, and what was interesting about the tape recorder is that obviously specification-wise, it's not as sophisticated as a digital recorder or anything like that, but the white noise that was produced from a tape recorder, pushing the play and record button, it conducted the noise to you could hear the noise a lot more clearer through a tape recorder. It is so weird. It's something to do with the frequencies and the way it was coming through and stuff like that. And I don't know quite why, but I picked up things on the tape recorder as opposed to a digital recorder as well.
Yeah, I think the one thing that there's a known, because I was in a rock band for 20 years, and I actually had hair down on my shoulders, and ain't none of that now. But during that time, I learned a lot about carrier waves versus that are over top of white noise like that, because you generate a lot of white noise back in the day with all that analog equipment that we had, and in the band. And one thing that I found too is that believe it or not, what your voice will actually I don't know, it's almost like the white noise actually helped your voice to project across the public address system, which is weak. And it was interesting how that would propagate. So, but that's yet another line of experimentation we're going to be looking at down the road. We have so much that we want to do. And since we're now let's call it a 501c3 down here, but we're a federally recognized nonprofit, we're taking donations and stuff like that. So we're going to be able to write some grants too, because now that we're a nonprofit, we could write some grants and be able to do a lot of this work that we want to do. And so that's one of the things that we want to do. We're also helping out with a lot of other events out there. There's one coming up in January at a place called Hanover Tavern, where we're helping with a Paracon that's there. And we're going to have a science track. And there's a fellow that's going to be there. His name is Brandon Masulo. And he is a psychologist, lives in Ohio, and written a couple of books and several papers. And he about a lot of paranormal type stuff. And he actually is a champion of the citizen scientist approach that I just talked about. And he's a big fan of that, huge proponent of that. So he's going to be at that event in January. I think that's January 21st or something like that. But then in June, we're going to be helping with the Kling brothers. You remember Brad and Barry Kling from Ghost Lab TV show? It was back in the day on Discover Channel. But they're Brad and Barry Kling are hosting an event in Central Virginia at the Shenandoah Crossings Resort on June 8th through 10th. They're going to be looking at Civil War history and the paranormal, which is real interesting in this area. And we're going to be helping with that as well, providing a scientific angle as we investigate 2 locations during that time period. And and Jason Hawes is going to be there, and Tim Shaw, and that's actually called the Ghosts of or the Shadows of Shenandoah. Sorry, they just announced it last night. The Shadows of Shenandoah is going to be the event, and we're gonna be helping with that quite a bit too. So we're trying to, assert influence, so to speak, get the word out, about the scientific method, experimental design, the importance of doing all that stuff. So that's one of the things we're trying to do, and trying not to make a lot of people mad in the process.
Do you have these events on your website?
They're on our Facebook page. You can go to it's gosh, I can't remember what it is now. I'll tell you real quick. It's VA CPRI on the Center for Paranormal Research and Investigation. You can look that up on Facebook, and we are there. And you'll find a lot of stuff. We even have examples of our data from various locations that we've been to on there, as well as links to some papers that have been written. So there's a lot of that stuff on there. Plus, there's a link to our main webpage, which is actually being redone because we got our 501c3. We're now redoing our webpage. So that's being done outside of my purview, actually. So, but I do know that the Facebook page is updated with a lot of stuff. So all that stuff's there.
Brilliant.
Perfect.
Brad, thank you. Pleasure.
Well, sure.
Thank you so much, sir.
Wonderful to meet you. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, nice to meet you too, Kev.
So thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. And next week we have a new guest, which is it's going to be our Thanksgiving weekend next weekend, isn't it? It is, isn't it? Is it next weekend?
I think it is.
Oh yeah, for Canada. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. Tune in next week, and don't forget to subscribe and click on notifications for the channel. And we will be back next week with another guest. Take care, guys, and have a wonderful week. Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you all.